Welcome back, friends. You are listening to the Juicebox Podcast.
Hi, I am Alex. I am 42 years old. Can't believe I'm saying that. And I live in Dallas, Texas. I feel like I'm 30. I think I will always feel like I'm 30.
Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. I know this is going to sound crazy, but Blue Circle Health is a nonprofit that's offering a totally free virtual type 1 diabetes clinical care, education, and support program for adults 18 and up. You heard me right. Free. No strings attached. Just free. Currently, if you live in Florida, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Ohio, Delaware, Missouri, Alabama, or Mississippi, you're eligible for Blue Circle Health right now, but they are adding states quickly in 2025. So make sure to follow them at Blue Circle Health on social media and make yourself familiar with bluecirclehealth.org. Blue Circle Health is free. It is without cost. There are no strings attached. I am not hiding anything from you. bluecirclehealth.org. You know why they had to buy an ad? No one believes it's free. The episode you're about to enjoy was brought to you by Dexcom. The Dexcom G7, the same CGM that my daughter wears. You can learn more and get started today at my link, dexcom.com/juicebox. This episode is sponsored by the Tandem Mobi system, which is powered by Tandem's newest algorithm, Control-IQ Plus technology. Tandem Mobi has a predictive algorithm that helps prevent highs and lows and is now available for ages 2 and up. Learn more and get started today at tandemdiabetes.com/juicebox.
Hi, I am Alex. I am 42 years old. Can't believe I'm saying that. And I live in Dallas, Texas.
Why can't you believe you're 42?
I feel like I'm 30. I think I will always feel like I'm 30.
I'm looking here because you said it was okay if we talked about it. You were on the podcast in the past.
Yes. I was on the podcast about 4 years ago, and it was a very cool moment because I was on an After Dark episode talking about mostly relationships, but sex and relationships from a female perspective. And when I was on, I was dating my now husband. And so it's a really cool time capsule to go back and listen to it because, you know, it was right before COVID, like a couple of weeks before COVID is when we recorded it.
Mm-hmm.
And right after we recorded it, my husband and I quarantined together for, we were living in Chicago. So, I don't know. We ended up very quickly getting engaged, getting pregnant, getting married, and doing all those things. And so to listen to the podcast now, it's such a gift because I was in such a different state. And then the state of the world was so different then too. I was dating and relationships, and then I was dating my husband, and, now we're married and have this beautiful son and beautiful life together. So cool.
I sometimes think that if I can figure out when the last year of my life is, I'm going to go back and just listen to the podcast straight through.
Yeah.
Might become the easiest way for me to remember things.
It would take you a while for sure. So,
well, yeah, you were on episode 319. And this morning I put up episode 1344. So
a lot of life that happened in there.
Yeah, well, it's just a ton of conversations. But it's funny, the description of your episode, it says, Alex discusses with clear and frank language having sex with type 1 diabetes, not for children.
That's correct.
Yeah. Funny. I don't remember it at all. I might have to put it on my short to-do list of going back and listening to.
Most of my family doesn't even know I did that. So now, now everybody will know.
But, you think it might come out now? Yeah.
It was definitely a different lifetime ago.
It's interesting. It's short time, but feels like a long time.
Yep.
Yeah. How about that? So when you're trapped in a box with somebody for a year and nobody murders each other, you figure might as well get married?
Yeah. Our relationship was kind of definitely like lots of, everything was expedited, I would just say. So we were, quarantined in Chicago. We lived in the South Loop at the time. So a lot of the George Floyd stuff was happening at the same time. And it was truly a pressure box because we lived about block away from a police station. There was so much happening just in the city in that moment. And we kind of just went through a lot emotionally, I think, together. And definitely everything was expedited. We got engaged pretty quickly. We were only together, I mean, we were dating not even maybe 6 months. And then we decided to get pregnant kind of all at the same time. And then we got married. But it was, it was a magical experience. I actually wouldn't trade that quarantine experience for anything in the world.
Wow.
It was a really cool
That's
experience my
interesting.
husband and I had. Yeah.
It's also really interesting to hear that you met somebody and you liked them enough that when the quarantine happened, you were like, I guess we'll do this together, because if we don't, like, we lose this thing we're starting to build, right?
It was we had been together for 3 months. And I feel like that's like the make or break it time in most relationships. It's like, are you going to commit or are you going to not commit? And we were just all in at that point. So like I said, it's fun to go back and listen to what you sound like when you were dating your husband or your spouse for, at that kind of mark. Yeah, it was a cool experience.
Cool. So tell people one more time, you have type 1?
I have type 1. I've been a type 1 diabetic, or person with diabetes, I should say, since I was 26, and I'm 42 now.
36, 40. Okay. I don't want to get off the subject too quickly, but I always do wonder, like, when you say I've been a type 1 diabetic and you realize, like, oh, I don't want to say that I'm a diabetic. Like, is that a thing that you care about personally, or a thing that you think other people care about using that word?
I think other people care about it more than I do, probably. But I definitely don't feel like diabetes defines my life in any way. And especially, I wanted to talk about kind of diabetes and working in corporate America and career-wise and that kind of thing. I've never, felt like I wanted to be perceived as different in any way.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear you. I just didn't know. Like, some people find the word off-putting, and I've heard my daughter use it, not use it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think she probably says I'm diabetic more than I have type 1 diabetes. I don't think it matters. It just matters, to the person it matters to.
You know what I think about when I say I'm diabetic is, like, what was that guy's name? Wilford Brimley, who used to do the commercials, you've got diabetes.
Yes.
That's what I think about when I say, like, oh, I'm diabetic, like an old person. I don't know why. I have no idea why.
Interesting. Just somebody from the South who said diabetes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Actually, I'll tell you, today's episode I told you went up is with this doctor that I've had on a number of times. He's awesome, like, really great, knowledgeable guy, but he's from Texas and he says diabetes. I learned to, like, listen through it when he says it, because at first I had the same thing. I was like, oh my God, this sounds like the Wilford Brimley thing. But then I just sort of let it go, because his information and the way he thinks about it is so good. Can I ask, like, professional, like, can we, like, I don't want to exactly say what you do, obviously, but, like, can you give me the idea of the industry or the kind of work? This episode is sponsored by Tandem Diabetes Care, and today I'm going to tell you about Tandem's newest pump and algorithm. The Tandem Mobi system with Control-IQ Plus technology features auto bolus, which can cover missed meal boluses and help prevent hyperglycemia. It has a dedicated sleep activity setting and is controlled from your personal iPhone. Tandem will help you to check your benefits today through my link, tandemdiabetes.com/juicebox. This is going to help you to get started with Tandem's smallest pump yet, that's powered by its best algorithm ever. Control-IQ Plus technology helps to keep blood sugars in range by predicting glucose levels 30 minutes ahead, and it adjusts insulin accordingly. You can wear the Tandem Mobi in a number of ways. Wear it on body with a patch-like adhesive sleeve that is sold separately, clip it discreetly to your clothing, or slip it into your pocket. Head now to my link, tandemdiabetes.com/juicebox, to check out your benefits and get started today. You can manage diabetes confidently with the powerfully simple Dexcom G7. Dexcom.com/juicebox. The Dexcom G7 is the CGM that my daughter is wearing. The G7 is a simple CGM system that delivers real-time glucose numbers to your smartphone or smartwatch. The G7 is made for all types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2, but also people experiencing gestational diabetes. The Dexcom G7 can help you spend more time in range, which is proven to lower A1C. The more time you spend in range, the better and healthier you feel. And with the Dexcom Clarity app, you can track your glucose trends, and the app will also provide you with a projected A1C in as little as 2 weeks. If you're looking for clarity around your diabetes, you're looking for Dexcom. Dexcom.com/juicebox. When you use my link, you're supporting the podcast. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Head over there now.
Totally. Yeah. I'm a marketer. I've been a marketer my whole career. I'm 42. So I would say the point in my career I'm at right now, which has sort of taken an interesting path lately, but it's kind of that director, senior director, VP type of level of marketing is what I've been doing the last couple of years. And I worked in advertising for a great majority of my career. I worked for an ad agency, worked on very large brands, large insurance brand. Everybody knows the commercials are on the TV constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Large tech brand that you probably take to and from places. I've worked on these really big brands and mostly in non-tangible products, I would say, is what I've specialized in. So services and for large brands. And right now I work for, I had a career shift about a year ago, actually, which was a pretty pretty big shock to the system. I had been hired away from the ad agency from another, again, a large brand, worked in global marketing for them, was working with people all over the world. It was a retail brand, and retail's not doing well. And so I was hired and then let go within like 7 months of working there. So I switched, which was a huge shock to the system because I'm a very high performer and I was hired away from the company, et cetera. But it ended up being, which I think everybody says this after they get laid off, it ended up being the best thing in the entire world for my career. I now work for a small insurance startup, I would say, is the best. It's a tech startup. And I lead their brand marketing right now. So all really been in the deep of the corporate to now more of a smaller startup entrepreneurial type of experience, which I actually much prefer. I had no idea how frustrated I was in corporate America until I got a job with a startup where I could kind of just do what I think needs to be done. And they sort of let me just do it, which is great.
It's interesting. Like, I don't think of myself as a marketer. I mean, there's no doubt, like, I have like a dual purpose, right? Like, I make a podcast so you guys can listen to it. And the only way I can put my whole effort into it is if people buy ads on it. And so it has to be popular. And at the same time, like, a lot of my day is often spent, like, no lie, you and I are going to get off this call and I'm going to jump right on a call with one of the advertisers. And so they have desires too. You know what I mean? They have things that they need and they want. And it's, they want the ads to sound a certain way. They want me to read them. They want them to be on episode. They have, this one's not working as well as that one is, like that kind of stuff. The part about it, what you made me just think about, is that sometimes I just work with a person. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I work with, like, sometimes people come on calls and I think, why are there so many of you here?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Like, I'm like those four haven't said anything. They're not even taking notes. Like, I don't know what's happening exactly. Like, you try to like address them and they look off camera like, someone save me. I don't know what to say. And those are the ones that often seem the most mired down. Mm. People will ask me all the time, like, how is the podcast so successful? I mean, because it's been going for a decade. Like, the truth is like, I say this all the time, but like, one of the things I think I should be most proud of is longevity. Turning out a quality thing over and over again for years and years without people, in this day and age getting sick of you and walking away or like that, or not, not being able to continue to grow, that kind of stuff. I think I'm mostly successful because I can pivot. Like, I can start something and say, I don't like how that went, or that didn't do what I thought it was going to do, or I shouldn't have done that series, and just, go right to something else. And no one stops me or has 1,000 questions. It's not like I'm shutting down someone's gig if I turn something off. I think that flexibility is incredibly important.
Yeah, it's the iteration. And I think corporate America in general thinks they do this. And like, I've been part of plenty of like all day seminars around what's called agile marketing and continuous improvement and working in sprints so that you're doing things faster and putting them out and testing and learning. Very few companies actually do it well.
Yeah.
And I think you just have to be small and scrappy and not have a lot of headcount in order to actually do that.
Right.
Because you cannot afford, if you're at a small company, to put something out that doesn't work. It's too important. Everything's too important.
I think if you have a division with 10 people and $1 million worth of salary going out the door, and those people are the ones telling you that we're flexible, you're not seeing the forest for the trees. They do that stuff all the time. Like, we'll build a group around this idea. Oh, okay, now nothing's going to happen. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's awesome. So it sucks that you got pulled away and then unceremoniously let go. But I guess what happened is you took the experience from the first place, which was significant. You went to this next place, which kind of probably changed your CV a little bit. And then that allowed you to look like a thought leader enough to go into a small place to run the thing. Is that about what happened?
Pretty much. I mean, it's my company now. I've never felt so appreciated, honestly. It's, they really, like, again, if you come with a lot of experience and it's like all of a sudden I woke up and I'm 42 and I'm the one that people listen to. And I was like, I don't know how this happened. One day it just sort of started to happen, but I started to actually know what I was doing. And people really listen, which is a cool experience. And people respect my opinion and advice and just let me kind of run with it, which is a completely different experience. When I was working in global marketing for the retail brand, I had all the same experience and the company was not doing well. And it's like, I go into meetings and I've got 3 ideas that I'm like, all of these things I think could improve this process. And they all get shut down because somebody in the C-level sort of smiles weird, in the meeting. It was a little bit like that movie, The Devil Wears Prada, like where it was just, nothing was strategically thought out, more than just like, well, this person doesn't really like that. So I don't think we're going to do that. Mm-hmm. It was just a very frustrating experience, working in that type of environment. But that kind of is a lot of marketing, at that level. Kind of,
it's what it is sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting space. I often feel bad for the people because they're great at, like, you're selling a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The way you talk about it is only going to take it so far. It still is what it is, so like they're out there getting their ass handed to them by their boss because they're like, we're not hitting certain, benchmarks, or the clicks aren't happening or whatever. Or a lot of this stuff is medical stuff. Like, people don't really buy it online. They ask their doctor for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're busy tracking links and trying to measure clicks and, I don't know, time on page and click through and all this. By the way, I hate all these words. I sit in these meetings and I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't say, but I work with some people who, like, they buzzword the meeting so much, I don't actually think they know what they're talking about.
Well, medical for sure, not to get this into a total marketing conversation, but medical for sure, what you just said, to me, the only strategy you should have for medical is brand awareness, because you want to be the first brand that you mention to your doctor. That should be the only goal. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this podcast does it. I use a Dexcom and I use an Omnipod because of this podcast. And it's the only thing that I remember because it's the only thing I've heard about on this podcast. Yeah. So when I went to my doctor, those are the 2 things I asked about. And that's, to me, in medical, should really be the most important, like the click-through rate and some of the lower funnel metrics. I'm speaking about something I'm not educated on.
No, it's funny though, because you said funnel and I almost banged my head against the desk when you said funnel.
Oh yeah, it's marketing talk. But I don't know who goes through the internet and is just like, what insulin pump should I use? Mm-hmm. No, you've probably poured over it in forums and listened to it and talked to your doctor. Like, it is a high touch experience that you've probably already had, or a multiple touch, I should say.
Right.
Experience before you actually go to the doctor and ask for something like that. So anyway, that's my perspective on pharma. I have no education there. So
yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate hearing about it from you, because you said earlier, like, I can't believe I'm the one people are listening to. Like, remember that I worked in a sheet metal shop and then, became debt collection. Then I became a stay-at-home dad. And then I wrote a blog and then I started a podcast. And now I'm a person where we sit in meetings. The people who have degrees look across at me and go, what do you think we should do? And I'm like,
because you're the talent and you're the creative. Because you're the creative, though. And there's a lot of power in that. And, so you didn't work on sheet metal. You were always a creative, is what I would think.
Well, trust me, I appreciate that very much. But there is still that moment in the conversation where you're like, you're asking me? I'm like, okay, is this what it's come to? All right, I'll tell you what I think. And then, what's funny is that a lot of times I say what I think and they go, no. And then they come back a year later and want to do it. That's always a funny thing. I love it when that happens.
Yeah, that happens. There's just a lot. I mean, just corporate, there's just a lot of waste. And that's, just sort of the way it goes. And just is, I don't know.
Yeah. Whatever the machine is, that's the machine. So I guess then let's just real quickly talk about how you manage your diabetes, because I want people to have a picture of what you're doing at work. So
Sure.
you just said you have a Dexcom and an Omnipod. Is it Omnipod 5 or Dash?
I have an Omnipod 5 and I have a Dexcom G6,
6.
not the 7. I'm waiting for the app and all that stuff any day now, I guess. Maybe it came out.
I mean,
Can't remember.
as we're recording now, like it has to be happening any day, like literally.
Yeah.
So
I mean, my endocrinologist who, has dust all over his office, like I think I'll probably talk to him about it in a couple months and maybe he'll have, be able to get me on it at that point. But yes, that's what I've got. And when last time I was on the podcast, I did MDI for a really long time. And I was so scared of having devices on my body. And so that was part of my, the first podcast I was on was just talking about that. But now I'm very used to it. I got on the Omnipod when I was about to get pregnant, and thank goodness I did. There's absolutely no way I could have managed my pregnancy with an Omnipod. Every single woman that has diabetes, that has had a baby, needs a massive high five, because it was one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my entire life was managing my diabetes while I was pregnant. It's really, really tough.
Yeah. How so? Tell people a little bit.
So there's a mental aspect to it, which I was not expecting, which is you constantly feel like you're hurting your child or hurting your baby if your blood sugar goes above 120. Mm-hmm. So the tightness of your numbers, that's what your endocrinologist talks to you about. But the mental aspect of it, which right, wrong, or indifferent, it's not necessarily true, is you think that something is going to happen to the baby if your numbers are going above 120. So that tightness is really tough because I really wasn't used to managing. Like my A1Cs were always around, not bad, but like 6.5, 6.6. Mm-hmm. But like, you're really trying to get into like the high fives at that point.
Yeah. And a 6.6 is some 180, some 220. Sometimes they stay up for a couple hours, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I would let it stay, I was kind of lazy about it. Yes. So getting during pregnancy, you really have to maintain that. Layer in feeling nauseous all the time. And, I sort of had this low level of nausea my entire pregnancy where you just sort of don't feel like eating all that much. And then you definitely only want to eat cereal, which was the thing that cereal, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and fruit was like,
baby, here comes the Lucky Charms. You're going to be.
It was like, I mean, I've never eaten Lucky Charms, but it was like, like Honey Bunches of Oats, like, things like that, where you're like really like, there's absolutely no way to manage that and be pregnant. And then
hold on, I'm always so interested where people want to make sure other people understand. Like, you're like, listen, I've not eaten Lucky Charms. Just let's excellent.
Yeah. I actually don't let my 3.5-year-old eat any cereal. Period. But,
also, if the kid has problems later, you don't want them listening back to this and go, oh, this is what happened. Those fake marshmallows got me. Sorry. So you're nauseous and you only want to eat odd things that push up your blood sugar.
Yeah. So that, and then every single week gosh, man, if you have to have diabetes and live in Chicago, Northwestern, like the women, the diabetes division, I went to like the special doctor, women that are pregnant with diabetes basically saw there. And it was like very good care. And so I saw this is special endocrinologist or special diabetes educator, I should say, that only met with type 1 moms. Like that was there. It was like, she was amazing. And I met with her every other week. And so we adjusted my insulin every other week. And so I was like learning to use the pod and pregnant and like, I mean, just all of that. And then you have the baby, and then the breastfeeding is like, then it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to eat 2 full bagels and not take any insulin. Like it was just so different once you actually have that baby.
Wow. Because
your body's burning so many calories from pumping or breastfeeding or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So it was just such a wild ride being pregnant. And I know you've had several episodes about it, but I'm like, there are not Jenny's book, actually, I would highly recommend that to everybody. That was My Saving Grace that she wrote. And I didn't realize it was her who wrote it, but
it's her and a woman named Ginger. They wrote it together.
Very, very helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody's pregnant without that book. So it was very, very helpful.
Isn't that awesome that it was like such a valuable thing for you? I'll make sure she knows. She'll be happy to hear that. Yeah, of course. Baby comes out, like insulin needs go back down again. Do you go back to 6.5, 6.8? Or do you say, well, I can do this, I'll keep doing it?
it changed my perspective on it. So it was more of I can do this. I'm going to keep doing it. It's probably slipped up a little bit since then. It's been 3.5 years, but it completely changed my perspective on like, oh, I can do this if I just paid attention a little bit more. And I learned, I think through that process and through just listening to your podcast too, I learned a lot more about how insulin works basically with my body. So
yeah, that's great. The baby's how old now?
He's 3.5. His name is Vaughn.
Vaughn? Oh, congratulations. Lovely. Are we going to do it again, or was that too much for one time?
He was a one and done, and I've always wanted just one. I decided, much like with things with my husband, like we're very happy with the way things are. Like I don't, in my life right now, which is like a wonderful thing to say, I don't want for anything. So I think like adding a second child, like there's no more happiness that I want or need. Like I feel very fulfilled by like my husband and my child right now, which is great.
Oh, it's interesting. Do you have pets?
No, we had a horrible cat that ran away. That we were kind of happy about.
I'm sorry. Did it run away or did it run away?
It was like sort of a cat that liked to go outside, and then he just sort of didn't come back one day, and we're like, ugh.
He loves it outside. It's awesome. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I didn't think you had pets because that collecting mentality, like what you said about I have as much happiness as I need, like adding another person couldn't possibly give me more, like that feeling, and like, like all that I think is awesome.
Yeah.
But a lot of, not most people, but people who feel like, oh, I got a fish tank and I set it up and it's really cool and I put the fish in it that I want. That's really great. 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to get another fish tank. And like that thing that people I think either have that or they don't.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm more of a minimalist just in general. Like we live below our means. I don't like having extra things in the house, like 100%. Like I just am very content with like a certain amount of things and that's it.
You live below your means. Is it partially because do you like that there's a little bit of money in the bank that you don't spend every month?
Yeah. I mean, that totally, that it allows us, we actually just bought a rental property, which we're turning into a short-term rental, which is another part of kind of like the story of after I got laid off and working for this new company. I work with a lot of real estate investors and it kind of caught the bug. And so I'm so happy that we had money in the bank because it allowed me to do the things I want to do. And that to me, that's like power. That's power. And that's real wealth is when you have the freedom of choice to do what you want to do with your life or your time or your money. And so like, I always like having money in the bank to be able to do the things that are important to us when they become important to us.
The way I try to think about it is like, I don't imagine I'm going to have like a pile so big that I'm Scrooge McDucking into it. You know what I mean? But like that there's a little more there than you need every month.
Yeah.
To think that if something goes wrong, like I don't want to like sound so basic, but if something goes wrong, you don't start running around going like, oh God, like how do I lay my hands on $1,000?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of feeling. I mean, I'm trying so hard to tell my kids about this while they're young. Don't get into debt when you're young and just put money aside, even if it's a little bit, because you'll see like what a big difference it makes throughout your entire life. Just not struggling and worrying is such an uplifting thing. You know, there's
a whole, and you probably maybe know this, but there's a whole mentality called the FIRE method, which is financial independence, retire early. And it's, it's a movement basically to take control back to yourself and live below your means, save money, retire early. Like you don't have to retire at 65. You can actually retire much earlier than that if you have, wealth building assets like real estate or something else that is going to actually make you money that you invest. You have to sacrifice early. You sacrifice a lot, but
right.
And we don't subscribe to that whole thing. Like we like vacations and stuff like that. But my husband did actually right before I got laid off. My husband quit his job without another job because we could, because he hated his job and he could, which was incredibly powerful, and I never want to feel like I have to do something, like I am, chained and we have bills and obviously that kind of thing. We definitely do, but like, it's incredibly motivating that like he was able to quit his job and he went and got his real estate license and was going to do that for a second. And then I lost my job and then he ended up just getting another job. But anyway, that was nice. It was just nice to be able to do.
Hey, that was nice that you felt like you could do that, but now go back to work very quickly.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of what happened, but it was okay. It all worked out.
No, but I mean, your point about that I think is really awesome because you can work what you're telling me is that I can work in a more corporate situation, but I don't have to be a tied to my desk person who's going to work till literally till my heart stops.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And especially and just bringing it back to diabetes, I've been in situations in corporate jobs that I didn't feel comfortable, and I didn't feel accepted or this was a great environment for me. You can either kick your legs and start screaming and trying to push back, or you can leave, or you can try to change it and make it work, but having all three of those choices, choices are a big deal to me. Having choice about everything is really important to me, and being able to actively choose where I work, who I work for, when I work is incredibly important. And it's probably because my mother is 80 years old. She is our nanny and still has to work. She always was working and always was working for companies that were probably underpaying her.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, the amount I saw her work, and then I'm still seeing her work for us, which is wonderful and a gift. But it's very motivating. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Do people work under you? Are you managing people?
Currently, no, just because I work for the startup, but I always have had a pretty large team. When I was at the ad agency, I had a team of, 7 or 8 at one point. I had 5 when I was at the retail company. So always have managed people. I've always tried to be an empathetic leader, I guess. There's nothing I would ask my team to do that I wouldn't be willing to do myself, and try to put people first and try to understand what motivates them, which I think is a really, it's a motivating thing to work for a manager who wants to make sure you're motivated.
Yeah. My wife is, over the years, managed a few people to a lot of people. And no matter how big or small the group is, when she starts up with something, I watch her spend the first 6 months making sure that the people are empowered and happy and have tools to do their job. And then she starts putting the pieces in place.
Yep.
People love working for my wife.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's interesting because you like that about the small startup idea. And so I was wondering if you were managing people, if you were doing similar things. But I think that's how the departments run well. They do a good job. People don't leave. You end up promoting people. Their lives get better. You get cards at the holiday that's like, look, here's my family. I was able to do this because of you. That kind of stuff. I never would have moved up here without this. And I guess my point is there's a way to do corporate and not make it horrible for people.
Totally. And I think my diabetes has 100% humanized me as a manager and made me more empathetic to people's situations also, because you really don't know. Nobody knows what's going on, and people love to, the movies, I should say, love to portray, working, it's just business. It's not personal, whatever. I don't believe that. There's actually a book I read early on in my career. It's called this is wrong, but it's always personal. And because you are managing people. So diabetes wise, I've always been very open with, I wear my Dexcom or my Omnipods on my arms sometimes. So people see it. And I've always been very open about, it with my team, just from a safety perspective of just hey, if you ever see, something awry, I might be low. And
if
this
Alex
is where
is talking about the colors on the floor, could you help her?
I always, this is where I keep candy in my desk. I've always been very open about it in the corporate environment. And this is just my perspective. I think a lot of people have different perspectives on this. And this is why I kind of wanted to come on the podcast. I just don't think people talk about what they do at work as much, especially if you're working in a physical environment, if you're a nurse on your feet, that is a totally different ballgame. So I'm not talking about that, but you're just sitting at a desk, day to day, most people probably wouldn't even know that you have diabetes. But I've been in jobs where I've been in the role for months. Actually, the role I'm in right now, most people probably don't know. I work from home right now. So most people probably don't know that I've got diabetes. But whenever I do go in the office, which is every now and then, or if I travel around to events quite a bit. Events have always been part of what I do. And so event work is very physical. And, it always sort of surprises people, makes people sometimes makes people a little uncomfortable because they don't really if I am going low, they don't really know what that means, if they're supposed to do something, so there's just like a whole set of sort of these norms that there's no rule book for in corporate America, other than just like the Americans with Disabilities Act. You need to make sure that,
and you don't want to be yelling about that on your first day of work.
Right. Yeah. You're not doing that. But anyway, there's like, to kind of finish that point, like I've always been very open with people about my diabetes, but not at first, I guess I should say. So it's like, I don't want people to know me as somebody with diabetes only.
Mm-hmm.
They get to know me first as a manager or whatever. And then at some point I will tell them that, hey, this is after a couple of weeks or whatever it is, like this, I've got diabetes and this is what it is. And I keep candy here. And I may sometimes have to step out of a meeting because my blood sugar is low.
Right.
And that's usually how I handle it.
It's important too, because in the beginning, whether we know it or not, people are looking for reasons not to like you when they first meet you. Like, right? They're trying to make sure you're safe or good for this space or whatever. And you don't want to give them something that they don't understand, that they potentially could be frightened of on day one.
Yes. In corporate America, people, especially at my level, people are sniffing you out when they first meet you, especially when you start a first job. Mm-hmm. They don't know why you got that job. They want to know why you got the job over somebody else that maybe they met or interviewed. And they want to see what you're made of, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm very cautious about just coming out with it, quickly when I start a new job. But eventually, after a few weeks or whatever, definitely share it and talk about it with people. And some people react differently to it. I had a client I worked with this is years ago. And the role was when I was at the ad agency, and I was doing a lot of event work then. So I was traveling to New York for the New York Auto Show. You're on the go. And at the time, I wasn't on a pump. I was doing MDI. And I don't even think I had a Dexcom actually then. I think I still was pricking my finger. And I, of course, had to prick my finger in front of this client, or like, adjacent to this client. Like, we would be together for 3 days straight, nonstop, working at this event. So, she made it very uncomfortable for me, because she made it very, very clear that she doesn't like needles, and she didn't want me, doing my shots in front of her. And she thought I should go to the bathroom and do that. Like, it was so frustrating, because she's a client. So you're trying to cater to her needs and be nice about it and be accommodating in some ways. But that wasn't working for me, especially when you're on the go and you just need to take care of something.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, very frustrating. And I talked to my manager at the time, and I was like earlier in my career at this point. So I talked to my manager about it. My manager asked me like what the big deal was about going to the bathroom and doing a shot, or, like not doing it in front of her. And I was like, very frustrated by that response. Like, that was the response. Right. But I understood, you're trying to accommodate somebody that is also uncomfortable. But I ended up writing her a note, like an email, and just saying like, this is what I'm comfortable with. I kind of sat on it for a couple of days, and it's like, this is what I'm comfortable with. This is my health. And this is what when we're traveling together, it was really a traveling specific thing. When we're traveling together, like, I'm going to need to test my blood sugar, and it's potentially could be in front of you. So like, if you could just look away, that would be really helpful. And the problem ended up resolving itself. But it was a really weird moment to navigate, especially, like I said, like, I was in my late 20s, so I didn't have a whole lot of power, quote unquote, at the company. And I'm, with this client that was a somewhat of an important client also a lot. So
did the client ever try to jam you up with work, or did they not go that far with it?
No. I mean, she just sort of was an interesting personality, I'll just say. But yeah, it was nothing work related. It was really more of just this like interpersonal type of situation where my work required me to be at a location, like at a third party location in the middle of a city. And so you're just having to like eat and manage your diabetes, like in place that you're on the go. Yeah. And I was like, this is still my work environment. Like, that was kind of my point of like, I need a reasonable accommodation for my work environment. Right. And it is,
what's interesting
taking my shots.
You brought up the location too, because I mean, you were at the Javits Center, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. So if people haven't been in Manhattan before, There's some places where you can just walk out on the street and walk into a CVS or walk into a pizza joint or something like that. But there are some places where you're not near anything.
No, you're not near anything.
Yeah. So it's you in that moment and the things you have with you. And so, and you're not, like you said, you're not wearing a CGM. So you're checking your blood sugar, you're being active, you're lifting and moving and probably stacking boxes and hustling and talking to people constantly. By the way, if people don't know this, when you go to those shows where people are like behind a table, the ones who are successful are in front of the table.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
So people who stand behind a table and wait for you to come to them, they don't know what they're doing and they're not going to have to talk to anybody. And they're going to think, oh, the thing I'm selling it's not it. I figured early on, I wrote that book like such a long time ago, but I got invited to this like authors. I don't know. It was almost like the best way to describe it is it felt like a yard sale for books, like where people just set up endless tables. They put their books there and the authors were there. And I stood there for 15 minutes and I was like, no one's stopping at any of these tables. It's not me. It's just people are walking around like you're not there. It's almost like you're window dressing, right? Yeah. And I grabbed a handful of those books and I got out from behind the table. I stood in front of the table and everyone that walked past me, I said, hey, how are you? This is a book I wrote. It's about this. And I started talking to them. And about 2 hours into it, I packed up my table and I left. And the guy next to me goes, where you going? I said, I'm out of books. And that was it. Like I brought cases of books and sold them all. And those people couldn't get the guy next to him to buy their book. And I actually started seeing that happen. They were starting to talk to each other. I'm like, oh, you guys are missing the point of this thing. Since then, even if I go to like Touch by Type 1, they give me a nice table. And I'm very lucky, I should say out loud, I'm very lucky that there are people who are local in Florida when I go to Touch by Type 1. Emily and her daughter, like they'll man my table for me and give out handouts while I'm speaking and stuff like that. But I go back to the table whenever I'm not speaking. I never stand behind it. Yeah. That's just not how that works. So you're active as hell. Your blood sugar was probably all over the place, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. It's like, well, you're eating, whatever you can find at an event. And then you're walking these very large convention halls. And so, working in events in this, like, it's been an interesting part of quote unquote working in corporate America also because it can be a very physical job. Everybody I work with, has to know that I've got type 1 and I keep things with me and they check on, some clients I've had have been wonderful. They check on me and they're interested and invested in it and they want to know about it. And some just don't, and recently I had another situation with the company I'm in now where we were going to a very expensive, so I still do events, but we were going to a very expensive resort for a trade show. It sort of happened after the fact, but they were sort of, asking questions about the cost of the hotel. And they're like, well, why couldn't you share a room with one of the other people that were working? And I had to just be very clear about like, I'm not comfortable sharing a room. My Dexcom goes off like the alarms, like, I don't know. I think it's because I put it like on my back above my butt basically. But like, especially if it's a new one that night, it's got the pressure, whatever that is. The compression low. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right. It's like every time, it is going off at 2, 3 a.m. And I was like, I cannot share a room with somebody in good conscience, like with my alarms going off all the time. Beep, beep, beep. Like, oh my God, what's happening? Yeah. And it was such an uncomfortable conversation. And first of all, I really don't want to share a room. Nobody wants to share a room at 42.
Yeah, I'm at work. This isn't summer camp. That's not a friend of mine. It's a coworker.
Nobody wants to do that. Yeah. But I understand that there's cost savings, and it's a startup, et cetera. But like, it was a very like uncomfortable conversation for me. Cause again, I really try not to make my diabetes a big deal, but like, there are accommodations and that are necessary. And I think some people, especially, I don't know if like Gen Z, like they kind of act differently than maybe the millennial generation of my generation. But like, I do not come guns blazing of like, you need to accommodate me. I think that's a really good way for people to like not promote you and not trust you and make it about your diabetes at work. I think I try to just always say, like, I can do this job, whether I have diabetes or not. How can I do it? Is there anything I need to ask for differently? And that was something I was like, I have to ask for, like, I was like, I will never share a room with somebody. Like, it will be incredibly anxiety ridden for me to share a room with somebody and like me just waiting for my alarms to go off and wake somebody else up. I was like, this is not something I'm comfortable with at all. So I would personally rather pay for my own room than share a room with a coworker.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny because not funny, but it's interesting. I agree with you about a lot of the stuff you're saying. Like, for instance, I wouldn't ask my daughter to go into the bathroom to give herself insulin or something like that.
No.
I see why you would be upset by that. And at the same time, I see when people say, I don't want to tell people about my diabetes, when I do want to tell them, like because, you're telling a story about working in a fairly professional environment. I don't know if you were stocking shelves at a big box store and, you might have a different experience.
Totally.
You know what I mean? You'd be different. You'd be working with different people with different ways of thinking, and that's going to be at every place you go. So it is a very personal decision based, I think, a lot on where you are and the expectations of where you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And
I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep going for a second because I also agree with you about the other part. I like people knowing, but I also think people are people. And in a survivor situation, which is what the working world is, everyone's trying to figure out how to get to the top. And you're a stepping stone for everybody who wants to go up. They're looking for a way around you. They are a lot. I mean, everybody doesn't do this, but a lot of people do. And you don't know who's who. And you show up on the day one and you go, hey, I get dizzy sometimes. They're like, I got this one. I'll knock her right over. Like, you know what I mean? Like you got to give yourself a chance too.
that's correct. And as I get older and as I move my way up, I don't think I ever saw that when I was younger in my 20s. I just and I worked for an ad agency. So everything was fun and we're all friends and we're whatever. But people are ruthless because their number one priority is themselves. And I'm a little bit more cynical about that as I move up because I've just seen more things. And the decision about who gets a raise and who gets a promotion, I've made those decisions.
Yep.
And there's small biases included in those decisions, and again, right, wrong, or indifferent, it happens. Like, so you have to just sort of be aware that this happens.
Yep.
And
you're working in a place where there's a pie for a bonus structure and you have to give a certain percentage of the pie to each person and find a reason why one person gets less than another because you only have one pie to give out. And
that's exactly correct.
Exactly. And you could be looking at two people and thinking, these people both did an exemplary job this year, but I'm going to give one of them less money than the other one.
Yes.
And those people know that's how that happens. And so, listen, those meetings where at the end, somebody just dings somebody else, and you're like, what was that for? And you're like, oh, they just wanted to put it out there. They're just laying breadcrumbs around. And the people who are good at it, you don't even see it happening.
Oh, I now have people who are really high up at really big companies that I, worked with earlier on in my career that I'm like, that was exactly what you just said. That was the guy who just sort of always added something at the end of the meeting that was a very general statement that didn't really mean anything, but sounded a little bit insightful. And that's the guy who is now the CMO of a major restaurant company that I was peers with, and it happens all the time. You
realize 5 years into something, you've been manipulated by somebody for years and you didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen that happen, right? People do work, someone else takes credit for it. And then they move up on your ass and then you're back there. And then the last thing they do when they go out the door is discredit you because they don't want anybody to know what happened.
It's a rough, I don't know. Corporate America is a rough place sometimes. And I always want to believe that people want to do good and want to be, that's not their intention, but it happens.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of lovely people, but I don't know. All my point is you don't know which one's which on day one, week one, month one. Going in the door saying things like, hey, my pancreas doesn't work and I might pass out. And if I need help, could you you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And at the same time, people need to know that for your own personal safety. So
right.
Tough line to walk is all.
The other thing, I have to do presentations somewhat regularly, I guess. I used to do a lot more where I was presenting to really large groups. And that is very I'm not afraid to talk in front of people, but it's nerve-wracking if your blood sugar is low and you're up, So that's another one that I really try to really pay attention. And like, those are the moments where I really am focusing on my diabetes. If I have to present something and I'm checking and I'm making sure I'm fresh for it. But it's happened several times where I mean, even small meetings where I'm going in and I'm maybe meeting some new clients and I'm really trying to like be impressive and I'm like sweating, and my blood sugar's so low. And like in those situations, I just have come out and just said, like, I'm meeting you for the first time and I am a type 1 diabetic and my blood sugar is low and I'm going to need 5 minutes. And it's like, you always get this like shocked look on their face, because they're like, oh, are you okay? Or whatever. But I do feel like I've had positive experiences that have come out of that. If I'm, again, just sort of vulnerable, I'll call it vulnerable or truthful about the situation, it humanizes you a little bit. So like those meetings where it's an important meeting and I had to pause before I started the meeting, they ended up being good meetings because it's almost people at ease a little bit. So that's a sort of a different experience.
Alex, because everyone's hiding something.
Right.
Yeah. And so you let your thing out and they were like, oh my God, probably literally someone sitting there thinking, I have Crohn's. I hope I don't myself during this thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's got something going on. There's somebody sitting there who is thinking, I think my husband's cheating on me. And there's someone sitting there who's thinking, I can't pay for my car. Like everyone has something going on. And when you give away your thing, you're like, hey, I got a thing too. Everybody's like, oh, good. We're not all trying to be perfect here.
That's a good way to think about it. I really actually.
A lot of people are pretending is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why whenever I meet a new client, my wife will remind me before I go up to the meeting, she'll go, don't curse. And I'm like, what? And she goes, you have no ability not to be yourself. She's like, don't curse. You're meeting them for the first time. And I said, I'm like, okay, but I don't know, Alex, like it happens. I'm not good at that. I'm not a professional person. Like I'm just not. But I think also, and you'd have to poll the people who work with me, but I think generally speaking, the companies that work with me, those people like working with me because there's no pretense. I'm not lying to them and they know it. And so things go easier.
You're the creative, you're the talent. So you should have a little bit of edge to you.
Oh, is that what I should have? Because I say fucking meetings sometimes and people are like,
like the creatives I used to work with especially at the ad agency, we always had to like sort of pick and choose because we did have some more conservative clients every now and then that would get very offended by foul language. But that was, again, that was sort of part of our we're the cool ad agency coming in to present you some really cool ideas that are going to break through. So we would put sometimes
edgier
a bit
people,
more raw people if we were trying to sell something that was a little bit more edgy.
I can act my age. What I always think is if we're going to be working together, I feel like you should know, like, this is me. And this is what's going to happen when you have a meeting with me on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock. This is how I'm going to be. And if that's good with you, then that's great. Because the worst thing that could happen is that I slip up during a meeting and I say something that I would say, they get offended and we're in the middle of a contract together or something like that. So I'm just like, look, this is who I am. And by the way, everyone's okay with it.
Yeah.
I've never had one person be like, no, forget it. I was meeting a potential client one time and we were talking and we're face to face, but over camera. And I stopped myself. I said, oh, geez, I got so excited. I almost cursed. And she just says, I live in New York. You can curse if you want. And I went, well, I'm not going to be the first one to do it. And she goes, you say whatever the you want. And I was like, here we go. And then we had this great conversation where, by the way, no one cursed after that. It was super interesting. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm just not my wife always tells me, she's like, if you had a job where I worked, you would get fired in 30 days. And I always respond, I go, I think I'd be the favorite person. So,
could be.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, we'll see. And I'm like, all right. It's a lot about how you manage your diabetes at work, which is incredibly helpful. How do you manage it with your husband? I mean, you guys are trapped together, so he must know every ounce about diabetes. Is that right? Or no?
I like to think so. I hope so. Especially during, he actually like joined the call when I got on with the Omnipod rep when I first got my Omnipod to help get trained on it because I wanted him to know about it also. Mm-hmm. That was something I talked about in our first episode was that one of the reasons I knew he was the one was he was so actively wanting to understand my diabetes and he was, became my follow person, was following my Dexcom when we first were, became boyfriend, girlfriend. He wanted to follow it and see my diabetes too, which is a level of intimacy that most people without diabetes would never know. And it's a really cool experience to be able to establish intimacy with a partner because they know exactly what's going on. We're now in our almost 5th year of marriage. Like, he pays attention a bit less. He still has it on his phone, but I didn't know how in the hospital, I've heard like all kinds of stories about letting the nurses manage your diabetes, which I'll talk about in a second because it was an interesting process. But I wanted to make sure he knew exactly what to do if they had any issues. So he knows how to, he knows what I do and he knows how to manage it. My son, 3.5, also knows everything about my diabetes, which is very cute and very fun. He loves helping me change my Omnipod. We bought all kinds of books for him about, it's one of them's called Mommy Beeps, which is a great little children's book exactly about your mom having diabetes. And so we wanted him to understand that what's going on in my body. And I tell him, I use, full words. This is the insulin, and, this is my pod, and, my blood sugar is low. Like, we explain everything exactly as it is. So he understands what's going on, which is really cool too.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea. I take your point too. The longer you're married, the more you just sort of like, it's interesting. I've been married a very long time, and there are things that I've just like, when we were younger, I'd be like, there's something I'm very interested in. I'd like to share it with her. And she's not interested in it. Like, she just doesn't have any interest in it, and vice versa. There are things that my wife loves that I'm like, I don't care about this, like, at all. Like, I care about you and everything, but not this. And it felt weird when we were younger, but as we got older, I was like, it's okay if I go do this thing by myself.
Yeah.
She doesn't need to be drugged through this. I'm having a great time looking at her being like, she does not want to do this. And vice versa. Although I still get taken to movies I don't want to go to. But that, I think, is a boyfriend thing, which I have to do. I'm just like, who is Ryan Gosling? Why are we here? But I think it's healthy to some degree.
100%. I think, yes. By the way, my husband and I are both on our second marriage. We both were married before. And that is a lesson I learned, about you should have lines in the sand and maintain this human that was formed before I met my husband. Like, I have to have things that are just my own. Mm-hmm. I think my diabetes is a family affair in general, because everybody needs to be aware of what's going on in our household.
I agree.
But I wish I do say this. I wish he,
let's get into it. What's this fucker not doing, Alex? No, I'm just kidding.
I do wish sometimes I get very overstimulated, especially if my blood sugar is high, mm-hmm. and I get very, like, ornery about things. And I do wish sometimes, like, instead of him getting up, he has every right to get upset if I'm being ornery. So I'm not saying that. He's every right. But I do wish sometimes that he's just like, let me check her blood sugar. Maybe I just need to give her 20 minutes and come back to this, That would be really helpful. But that's a little overambitious, I think. I agree with you. Like, it's weird to say that basically your husband should be like, you test your blood sugar, and if you're not high, we can have this argument. And but I agree with you. Like, it sucks, but you're having a medical situation. Yes. And then in the middle of that, you're talking like you're being your best selves, which is not true. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a knowable thing, which, by the way, I think this happens to people throughout their days constantly. I think people's blood sugars, people who don't have diabetes, can have lower blood sugars, higher blood sugars, and it changes who they are. You could have lack of sleep, different. My daughter and I just got done speaking this weekend about before I understood that my iron was getting low. And, like, this moment that sent me to the doctor originally is like, we were in our car sitting at a traffic light, and I don't remember what was happening, but it was something about the radio, and I had a reaction as if everyone in the car was trying to murder me with the radio. And I was yelling and just out of my mind. And my wife was like, what's wrong? And then, it's funny, when she said it, I looked at her in the 30 some years I've known her, and I was like, this one just wants me. Like, I had a weird reaction to the fact that she was wondering what the hell was going on to me. And then it was hearing my daughter's voice from the back seat. She's like, Dad, you're acting weird. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I told Arden, I was like, that you really saved me, because I was like, oh, something's not okay. I don't know what it is. And then we went to the doctor, found out, brought my iron back up, but my iron would also drift back down again. So boring enough, that doesn't happen to me anymore because I use a GLP medication. I think because my inflammation is less and because my digestion is slower, I'm now picking up my nutrients easier. That's super
Oh,
interesting.
it's crazy. My iron has not gotten low since I've been on a GLP medication. Almost, it's a year and a half now.
I mean, I'm not on one, but these GLPs,
Yeah, I can't
they're
wait to see
like,
what else happens.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, people are getting pregnant when they couldn't get pregnant. I mean, there's
Uh-huh.
just a lot of interesting stuff with it,
I
which
mean,
is,
if I grow a cape and fly away one day, I'm going to be like, I know that was that Manjaro or Zepbound,
Yeah.
whatever the hell I'm taking. No, but seriously, there's a lot that happens for people, especially people with autoimmune issues, when you bring down their inflammation. And like, so what else is going on? Who knows? You hear people talking about like, my wrists don't hurt anymore. Like a lot of my joint pain is gone. Like, you know, and not people who lost a bunch of weight and then lost their joint pain. So anyway, not the point. The point is that I was ebbing and flowing, and I can look back on it now and tell you that from a third party perspective, I was being an asshole, but I wasn't being an asshole. I just, like, my body wasn't working correctly. Like my brain wasn't functioning right. But it doesn't stop your spouse or your children or whoever you're talking to. They're still evaluating you as a person, not as a person with a medical issue.
yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what you're talking about. Like, let's not evaluate me while my blood sugar's 280 and I feel cloudy and I'm easily riled up, for example.
Yep.
Yeah. But how do you do that in the moment? It's tough.
You don't.
Yeah.
You just try to, maybe you're revisiting it later on, and
It still doesn't matter though, Alex. Like it sticks to you after it happens. Like every one of those moments. And that's an example of an unfair thing that type 1 is going to do to somebody's life.
It's probably, I'm minimizing it, but it is probably one of the things I get the most frustrated about. Is sometimes I feel like I need to go back to the doctor, but this is also just a life thing. But like, I get, as a mom, I get very overstimulated by sounds. And it's something I didn't used to happen before I had my son. But if like the TV's on and he's trying to talk to me, maybe my husband comes in and talks to me, and then you add a blood sugar element, it feels like someone's murdering me. I feel like I'm dying on the inside. And I get very overwhelmed very quickly. But it would be solved if someone was just like, maybe we should check mom's blood sugar and see if she's okay.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that goes into people talking about mom guilt. And it's interesting because you felt it pregnant. That was because you mentioned that earlier, right? Like, yeah, your blood sugar was higher before you were pregnant. You're like, I don't do a very good job of taking whatever. I'll figure it out. And then it happens. You're like, I'm murdering the baby. And like, that's mom guilt, right? But there's also this thing that happens. If my wife is any indication, if there is a maternal spidey sense that exists for women, you have a baby and it gets ratcheted up to like 1 million.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah. Like something bangs. What's wrong? Are the kids alive? Like, right? Like, yeah.
It's the thing I was not expecting the most. And I thought it would last for a couple months. And it never goes away.
Oh, it's going to torture you right to the end. Arden's alarm goes off at 2 a.m. Kelly's like, what's going on? What's wrong? Is Arden okay? I'm like, holy the thing beeped. Hold on a second. Like, it's not set it's not set at 40. Like, we have a minute, that kind of thing. And then I go to sleep and I open my eyes back. I'm like, are you awake? She goes, yeah, my adrenaline's like pumping now. I'm like, from a 70 blood sugar? I actually took her phone from her the other day and I took away her high alarm on Arden's Dexcom follow. I was like, you don't actually help her with this anyway. There's no reason for this thing to be beeping in your ear when she goes over 130. I think it's going to make her a healthier person shutting it off, actually. But yeah, she has that mom. That also, by the way, she's a terrific mom. Arden had a problem at school the other day. She sat on a FaceTime call with Arden for 5 hours the other day.
Wow.
And talked her through things. They tried ideas. They did all stuff. They sat quiet maybe for 90 minutes together while they were working, each one. And I was like, I knocked up the right lady. Like, she is really a good mom. But I also don't know if she's a good mom or if she's just being motivated by chemicals that changed her body. I have no idea. But maybe that's what that is even. Who knows,
I think it's the way we've evolved. It's another thing when I had my son, I was like, there's things that I now want to do. I'm like, I'm wanting to do this because this is the way that we evolved, because the cavemen, or cave ladies, like, were afraid that a tiger was going to come get their baby. And so this is why I have anxiety that my son, or my son's going to stop breathing all of a sudden for no reason.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just
all
the way we've
happening to you, huh?
evolved.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be a lady for a number of reasons. Also, bras are very expensive. That seems like another reason I don't want to do it. What happened to Kelly and what happened to you and what happens to a lot of people when they have kids, like, it does seem unfair, honestly. I mean, let's be honest. Are you in a dangerous situation where you live?
No.
No, your kid's fine.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine at all times.
You're acting like you're the, you're at the 28th parallel in the middle of the Vietnam War. Like, this kid is not going to be okay. Like, he's all right. Now, I don't know how to get rid of that. That sucks. Do you ever think, can you look back? Did you see any anxiety before the baby?
I mean, everybody has anxiety. I would say that my anxiety was normal. But I definitely had postpartum anxiety where I was getting so overwhelmed by like unstacking the dishwasher. I had that for probably, 6 months or so after he was born, where I would just get very overwhelmed by small things, which is, a lot of people have. It wasn't
hormonal, do you think, as well? Could you notice it like ebbing and flowing at all, or no?
It was just really intense for you. And actually, until, it was until I went, this is the opposite of probably what everybody else says. Until I went back to work, I think I'm just so I'm a really high performer at work, and I'm so used to having a lot of asks and demands and balancing like a lot of plates at the same time. And I think only focusing on the child, which while wonderful and good I'm so lucky that I had 3.5 months, but mentally, I don't know how great that was, because I think I just was focusing on like making really big deals of small stuff. So until I went back to work, then I started to like realize that like unstacking the dishwasher does not have to happen this moment in time. Like I can actually just like do something else.
Yeah, right. And your energy is taken up a little more, so it's spread out a little better.
I think that is a completely me thing, though. Like most women, are begging to have that much time off of work, and I was happy to have it. So I don't want to sound ungrateful. I was so happy to have it, but the mental aspect of and it was also during COVID, so that probably has something to do with it.
You like having things to do, and
I had mental stimulation. Like I had, very, very little mental stimulation other than like I would watch Below Deck while I was breastfeeding, and I was exclusively breastfeeding, and I was breastfeeding all the time, like always. So that probably had a lot to do with it. And yes, it was definitely hormonal, but it was like I need somebody to ask me a hard question and me to strategically be able to figure it out. Like I was really yearning for something like that.
Yeah, some problem solving. We also might have to call your episode Below Deck, but that's neither here nor there. It's just another thing to track. Like guys who pay attention to, like I pay attention to my wife, okay? Like I know, like she doesn't like it. She hates that I know about her. Like I don't know if that makes sense or not, but like there's a day, it used to happen when I was younger. I couldn't stop, like I'd say it out loud. I don't do it anymore. But I would say like, why are you being so nice today? And then I'd go, oh, wait. I'm like, oh, hey, heads up. You're going to get your period in 48 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, no, you don't know me. No, I'm not. Blah, blah, blah. 2 days later, it happens. She was pissed that I could tell. But I realize now in hindsight, what she's mad about is that feeling that you are not being the person you mean to be. Mm-hmm. You're being a version of yourself based on, a hormone level or how much you feel like, I don't know, protective of your kid, or like, for me, like where my iron was. Like I now know that feeling of like, no, I am me, damn it. And people around you are like, not really, not today. It kind of sucks. It's being human, but yeah, I take your point. It would be nice if there was like a warning light, like there were people could go, oh, I'm not going to bring this up now because her blood sugar is unfairly high at this moment or low or something. But
yes,
yeah,
agreed.
Anything we haven't talked about that we should have? I have too good of a time talking to you, I'm realizing, and my call is in like 10 minutes. So.
Oh, no, I think we got everything. I really wanted just to kind of share my perspective on corporate America and managing diabetes and the way you talk about it, at work, and being cautiously open about it, I guess, is the way I take it. And I'm curious just what other people do. I think it would be interesting because I know you've had a lot of guests that, they like, I feel like most of your guests like work in, they're nurses or like, I don't know, they're working in like the medical field, or they don't do what I do. Like, I guess like they don't work in like corporate marketing where your perception of yourself means a lot, and you're trying to dazzle clients and you're trying to be this hero in the room while you're managing diabetes. And it's an interesting dynamic. I've just always felt like of like, how do I bring this up and how do I address this? And like, you're sort of, always trying to be strategic business wise about it.
Have you ever been in charge of selling something that's just a stinker, it's garbage, and you have to tell the person like, look, this isn't what we're doing. Like, this thing just sucks.
Yes. I had a project. We get a lot of those, like when I was working at the ad agency, and I was working I was completely dedicated to a very large brand for a very long time. And they were, so this was just sort of this like answer. They had this like, it was called like Red Labs, and it was sort of this like, we're going to be a startup within this big company. And they came out with it was basically a service that someone would pay for, which I would never pay for this, to help like your aging parents organize their medical appointments on an Amazon Alexa. But it was basically just like an app. And I was like, there's got to be a free version of this. Like, why would somebody pay for this to organize their medical appointments? It was not something I felt like there was a whole lot of value to, but they felt like, they wanted to work with Amazon and whatever. We had to basically, do basically a SWOT analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. I forgot what the T is, but anyway, a SWOT analysis on, how we would talk about this product or what's the consumer benefit, and basically show them that there was no value to a consumer that we could justly talk about. And it took weeks to like put this presentation together and like reviews because we didn't want to offend anybody. And I don't think they took our advice even with it. I think somebody at the top just squashed the whole thing eventually. And
that thing did not fly away and do great?
No, I think it squashed before they even rolled it out. And God knows how many weeks or months, had been put into this project to begin with, unfortunately.
The T is threats, by the way.
Oh, there you go. Threats. That's what it was. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, no, I really appreciate your time. Are you able to hold on for a moment?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you for doing this again. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Dexcom sponsored this episode of the Juicebox podcast. Learn more about the Dexcom G7 at my link, dexcom.com/juicebox. Today's episode of the Juicebox podcast was sponsored by the new Tandem Mobi system and Control-IQ Plus technology. Learn more and get started today at tandemdiabetes.com/juicebox. Check it out. Earlier, you heard me talking about Blue Circle Health, the free virtual type 1 diabetes care, education, and support program for adults. And I know it sounds too good to be true, but I swear it's free. Thanks to funding from a big T1D philanthropy group, Blue Circle Health doesn't bill your insurance or charge you a cent. In other words, it's free. They can help you with things like carb counting, insurance navigation, diabetes technology, insulin adjustments, peer support, prescription assistance, and much more. So if you're tired of waiting 9 months to get in with your endo or your educator, you can get an appointment with their team within 1 to 2 weeks. This program is showing what T1D care can and should look like. Currently, if you live in Florida, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Ohio, Delaware, Missouri, Alabama, or Mississippi, if you live in one of those states, go to bluecirclehealth.org to sign up today. The link is in the show notes. And please help me to spread the word. Blue Circle Health had to buy an ad because people don't believe that it's free. But it is. They're trying to give you free care. If you live in Florida, Maine, Vermont, Ohio, Delaware, Alabama, and Missouri, it's ready to go right now. And like I said, they're adding states so quickly in 2025 that you want to follow them on social media at Blue Circle Health. And you can also keep checking bluecirclehealth.org to see when your free care is available to you. Hey, thanks for listening all the way to the end. I really appreciate your loyalty and listenership. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The Diabetes Variables series from the Juicebox Podcast goes over all the little things that affect your diabetes that you might not think about. From travel and exercise to hydration and even trampolines. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Go up in the menu and click on Diabetes Variables. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.